world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Hey, where you been? Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I am Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. This is your Monday pod, and this pod is essentially based off of a story that I didn't realize Stefan was going to write the story when I decided to make this a pod, but I guess it kind of works out that he was going to do this when I told him we were going to do this. We're looking forward. What we've typically done in the past is we have centered the idea around this pod to be third-year guys. You know, the idea of like Marshawn Lattimore, Malik Hooker, the guys who maybe haven't necessarily had big time roles yet, might be on the verge of a breakout season going into their third year here, like those two did, like we saw with Arvell Reese and Cade McDonald this past year. But the problem is you can't really do that with third year guys when all the guys that would have been candidates for this award are now playing for other football teams, right? This would have been an interesting conversation about Aaron Scott, maybe like a Mylan Graham situation. But you can't really talk about those guys when they play for Oregon and Notre Dame anymore. So we're just opening up the floodgates to include practically anybody you want to include. And it's got to be someone who's not already established guy. We're going to go with two each. We both have a list. All three of us have a list. And maybe we have some overlap in some of our lists. But we're going to give two each. Stefan, let's start with you since you're the one who actually did it for the site. Number one breakout candidate in 2026 for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, for me, the guy that I've kind of harped on this offseason, what I think he can do for Ohio State is Zion Grady, defensive end. And I think that there is an opportunity certainly for him to start. We did our depth chart, discussions earlier this week or last week, whenever it was, talking about Kenyatta Jackson coming back and John Walker and Edric Houston, what they can provide you at defensive tackle. And on the other side, you have Kay Russaw and Zion Grady kind of competing for that other starting spot opposite of Kenyatta Jackson as they look to replace Caden Curry. And I think with Russaw coming in from the portal, you kind of quickly pencil him in as a starter. But I'm looking at Zion Grady saying, what if this is just a highly rated guy who's ready to have a breakout season in year two at the collegiate level, right? Like came in, had decent amount of reps last year. I think it was somewhere close to 100 snaps, 13 tackles, a sack. So it's like obviously nothing to truly blow you away, right? Nothing like we saw maybe from Edric Houston his freshman year. He had a much bigger role than Zion Grady had his freshman year. But I think you saw glimpses of what he can be. You give me now 2 off seasons and 1 season under his belt. I think I'm excited about what he can provide for Ohio State. I should have wrote it down. I either read somewhere or heard on someone's podcast talking about Ohio State and maybe some of their flaws going into the 2026 season, or maybe not flaws, but like questions. And they were talking about the defensive line maybe being a bit of a question mark. And I thought it was interesting because I feel like I've come on here and talked a lot about how I think this defensive line can be really good. And I think that's because I'm projecting Zion Grady to be really good. If you're on the other side and you're looking at this saying, okay, they get Kenyatta back, they have Edric Houston back, they have a transfer in John Walker coming in. Okay, who's going to fill in for Caden Curry? Is it Russaw, a transfer from Alabama who didn't do a ton? Or is it Zion Grady, a guy who's going into his second year and hasn't done a ton? And from that perspective, that can be scary. So I understand where questions about Ohio State's defensive line come into play. I just haven't approached it that way because of how good I think Zion Grady is going to be this year in the breakout season that he's going to have. So he is He was number one on my list in the article I wrote. He is number one on my list in this podcast where we're discussing breakout players for 2026. I am a Zion Grady believer. I think he's going to have a really good season as a sophomore.
Zion Grady, top 100 recruit in the 2025 recruiting class out of Alabama. Actually, no, he wasn't. The number 114 player in that class, number 13 edge. Unless I'm looking at the 247 and not the actual composite one. I don't like that 247 like does this thing where it shows you, 81 in the composite, number 9 edge rusher in the country according to the composite. You said this not like Edric played more. I think Edric played more because they played more football games. Edric Houston in 2024, and I know it's not a 1-for-1 because Edric was also transitioning into the inside while Grady's on the outside. Top 100 recruit who maybe has a small role as a freshman then pops as a sophomore. Edric Houston in 2024 in 13 games played 324 snaps. No, excuse me, that's this year. Zion Grady this year played in 11 games, 104 snaps. Edric Houston last year played 14 games, 141 snaps. So it's essentially like, oh, you played 3 extra football games because your freshman year, Ohio State didn't lose in the Cotton Bowl in the quarterfinal.
I guess I'm kind of thinking more so. I guess Edric by the end of the year had a decent role. Zion never really got into that, but I guess that's true. Because Edric early on in his freshman year didn't really play a whole ton.
No, he didn't, which is why the point I was going to make is before I completely just mumbled over that is I wonder what would have happened if they had gone on a run here. Would we have seen more of Zion Grady maybe later on in this, in a semifinal against Ole Miss, or would we have seen more guys play against Indiana the second time around? Gillis, what do you think of Zion Grady? As Stefan said, he's number 15 in the program, but number 1 in Stefan's heart.
I love using that line. I'm glad you used it. I use that a lot. I'm in. He was number 1 on my list. He was the guy that I think, like, when you kind of map out where this team can be, I think there's going to be a lot of talk about like returning production and Quay Rousseau is here, and how does that change things? And Bo Atkinson is old, and apparently being over the legal drinking age is all that matters in college football now. Apparently, if you're old, that's great, and it means if you're 18, you're bad, and if you're 21, you're amazing. This is an interesting. This is an interesting thing for me because it's like Zion Grady, top 75 recruit, second year player. Like, this is kind of one of those like nature versus nurture conversations. It's like talent versus age, because I don't think anybody's going to dispute that like Zion Grady has elite upside, but how do you compare that with a dude who's a little bit older, right? I think this matters. So yeah, to me, Zion Grady is somebody that I look at and I think when we get to 2026, we might be talking about a like veteran laden defense again, where there's a lot of NFL draft eligible players. I kept pointing that out repeatedly over the course of the season. I think he might be the Jalen McClain of 2025, where I'm going, hey, everybody on this defense could go pro except, and I think it might be Zion Grady.
Edric Houston postseason games. This for 2024 would be Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame by game. And granted, they blew some of these teams out. So, like, that's part of this. But 16 against Tennessee, 14 against Oregon, 14 against Texas, 11 against Notre Dame. Zion Grady, 3 against Indiana, 3 against Miami. So I'm actually, that's actually 1-for-1 too, because Zion Grady by the end of the year was no worse than like 4th in the defensive end hierarchy, and maybe even had already surpassed Bo Atkinson. While you could probably say the same thing about Edric at that point. And we understand what Katie McDonald turned into, but I think at that point, if you wanted to make a case that, like, hey, Edric Houston was no worse than 4th, maybe he was even 3rd in the defensive tackle hierarchy behind Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, I think you can probably make that case. I like Zion Grady a lot. I think he's going to be a stud here. Gillis, who's up for you? Breakout candidate for 2026.
Yeah. We saw it for 10 snaps only against Miami. He was kind of a rotational player this year. Didn't really start a lot. I think Peyton Pierce is going to be a dog for Ohio State. I think this guy is going to be really, really good. He played 263 snaps this year, kind of playing in that, that third linebacker role behind Arvell and Sonny. And nobody thought that he was going to jump those guys in his second year here with the program. But I looked back in 2024, Arvell Reese. So remember that number here first. 263 snaps for Peyton Pierce in 13 games. Arvell Reese, 309 snaps last year, in 16 games. Kind of played as that third linebacker, he played a lot early and then kind of a rotational player down the stretch. Played a lot against Michigan and Tennessee. Like when they played Oregon and Texas, he didn't really play a lot because they had to get an extra speed on the field. Cody Simon.
Can I just say before you continue?
Yeah.
They had to take Arvell Reese off the field for extra speed. Knowing what we know now is objectively funny, even if you're right.
Yeah, I know. Cody Simon in 2023, he was behind Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. He played 374 snaps, and that was because 73 snaps were played against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. Because I don't remember if Eichenberg and Chambers didn't play, but I know one of them didn't play. And Cody Simon started that game, and he came back for his 5th year. So he was about at 300 snaps when the regular season ended. I think Peyton Pierce is on that same trajectory. I think Peyton Pierce is going to be somebody that when we look at the end of the year, we're having conversations about Peyton Pierce maybe being one of the best players on this defense. I think everybody's going to look to Devin Sanchez because he's got the 5th star and he played as a freshman, and everybody's going to look to Zion Grady because he's, got really good upside as a defensive end. And I think we're probably all going to overlook Peyton Pierce to some degree. This is somebody that James Laurinaitis, he made a point to make sure he was in the program. Peyton Pierce was going to Notre Dame when James Laurinaitis was at Notre Dame. He was going to South Bend, Indiana, so he could play for Laurinaitis. James Laurinaitis takes a job in Columbus, and one of the first people he calls is Peyton Pierce because he wants him to now come to Ohio State. Now he's at Ohio State. I think Laurinaitis values him a lot. I think this team's going to value him a lot. I think Peyton Pierce is going to have a damn good season for Ohio State. And I think at the end of the year, we are going to be looking at him, even if it's not in the same realm as like Sonny, where it's, this guy's locked in, top 10 pick, top 12 pick, top 14 pick, whatever. I think there's going to be a lot of Ohio State fans that feel very, very good about what Peyton Pierce gives them in 2026.
I think Peyton Pierce is a heck of a pull. I think what's interesting for me, Stefan, is, especially since Gillis is using the Arvell Reese example there, is what we've been able to see is Sonny was in that position in 2024 where it's like, hey, Cody Simon is coming back and he's kind of the big brother of the room, and you've got Sonny Styles coming along with you. Sonny Styles is coming back in 2025 and he's the big brother of the room, and you've got Arvell Reese coming along with you. Arvell's not coming back, so there is no pseudo big brother of the room. So there is an element to Peyton Pierce where we think Christian Alagrio might be pretty good here. We'll see. We think Riley Pettijohn might be pretty good here. We'll see. We think TJ Alford might be pretty good here. We'll see. But it's like Peyton Pierce is the only guy in that linebacker room who has played meaningful snaps as an Ohio State football player, and it's not a lot of snaps. So to some extent, while it's a great pick, it's also kind of a necessary thing for Peyton Pierce to kind of take a jump this offseason.
Yeah, if we were to look at the list of like breakout players and instead of saying, who do you think's going to have a breakout season, we did a list of like who needs to have a breakout season. Peyton Pierce is probably pretty high up there, right? Just because of what Ohio State is losing, in totality in linebacker. As you mentioned, Steve, like they're not just losing one guy. I wonder, but weirdly enough, Peyton is kind of taking the role of Cody Simon, Sonny Styles, because we've at least seen him. I get the sense already that we're going to go into this year and it's going to be like, we spent all of 2024 being like, wow, look at Sonny Styles. And it's like, well, you forget Cody Simon's just really damn consistent and really damn good. And then it's like, wow, look at Arvell Reese. It's like, well, Sonny Styles is really damn consistent, really damn good. I think that might happen where like Riley Pettijohn is a pretty good year. And it's like, wow, look what Riley Pettijohn's doing. It's like, yeah, but Peyton Pierce is really consistent and really damn good too. So like he is unproven, but also at the same time, relative to his room, kind of a little bit of a known commodity. And I think that's why it can maybe be easy to gloss over him because there's so many, shiny new toys on this defense specifically. But I think I agree with Gillis, where it seems like Peyton Pierce is in line for a really big season. He, as you guys mentioned, it's not like he played a massive, had a massive workload. I think his season high in snaps was the 35 he played against Wisconsin, and that's a game where Ohio State thumped Wisconsin. You talk about he played 10 snaps against Miami, forced a fumble in that game. He played 22 snaps on the road against Illinois, got an interception in that game. Like that's a guy who, when his number was called, he took full advantage of his opportunity. I think against Purdue, he had like 7 tackles. I think another one of those, Big Ten games where Ohio State cruised, he had 7 tackles. Like when he got opportunities, he took full advantage of them and showed you why James Laurinaitis referred to him as a starter, right? Like we asked about him a ton in the offseason, just about Peyton Pierce and his role and what you think you can do with him. And Laurinaitis kept saying, like, I view him as a starter. Like, he is a starter in our defense. I trust him as a starter. And he, 10 snaps against Miami, and one of them was one of the biggest plays of the game. So it's like they obviously trusted him in big situations. It's not like he played against Purdue and we never saw him against Miami, right? He's a guy who got opportunities in some of Ohio State's bigger games this season. And sure, maybe there were smaller opportunities, but they're opportunities that you remember, right? There's 2 plays that Peyton Pierce made this season that you remember if you're an Ohio State fan, like vividly. And that's notable for a guy who was the third linebacker, is now stepping into a starting linebacker role. I'm really excited about what Peyton Pierce can do. And it's clear why James Laurinaitis, as you mentioned, Gillis, like made it an objective to keep Peyton Pierce around. You don't think Texas or Texas Tech or TCU would have come calling for, or Texas A&M come calling for Peyton Pierce last offseason? Hey, you're going to be the third linebacker at Ohio State. Come enter the portal. Come be the starter at, insert name here. I mean, Texas Tech had a pretty good linebacker core. Texas had some pretty decent linebackers, so maybe it would have been tough. But like the point is that there's a lot of programs that could have said, hey, come be a starter here. Ohio State made it a priority to keep him around. Now we're going into 2026 asking ourselves, like, I don't know. He's probably an all Big Ten caliber guy, right?
And what I don't want people to do is, and I'm not saying you're doing this or anybody's doing it, I want to be cautious of is like, I think people are going to say, oh, well, you have to have production and it doesn't matter if you haven't played. It's like, I don't know, man, he's still been in the program for 3 years, right? Like, and that's the point you're getting at too. It's like, I understand that, yes, he hasn't played 1,500 snaps like dudes are getting out of the portal. Like, there was a dude, I saw something like where a Miami corner's coming back and I saw he tackled Garrett Wilson and he was in the same recruiting class as Kyle Hamilton. Like, I think that was the tweet. And I was I'm not like, you don't have to have that. Like, you don't have to be that.
Go.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Like, we shouldn't, like, I'm not saying that we have to have that, but like, I think everybody's kind of hell-bent on this idea of, oh, it has to be 1,000 snaps. It's like, okay, well, like, what if it's 100 snaps and you're still a third-year player? Like, that still matters to me, too.
I don't think – I think that's the extreme. If you're going to pay 2 people, there's 2 options to pay 2 people. If 2 people are asking for $2, essentially, you'd rather give those $2 to the guy who has proven he's worth the $2 than the guy who, like, ideally could be worth the $2. That's where the get old thing is coming from. This is not Peyton Pierce is not in that conversation. Peyton Pierce didn't walk in anybody's office and ask for $2. And this is, I understand we're dealing with more money. We're just, for the sake of the eloquy here, where it's like, hey man, you're probably worth 50 cents right now and you're asking for $2. Okay, then if you're going to ask for that, I'm just going to get a guy who probably has already shown me he's worth the $2 versus paying it for an idea. I think Peyton Pierce, I mean, the description you just gave, Gillis, that's the Arvell Reese description from a year ago. That's the Caden Curry description from a year ago. That's the Kenyatta Jackson idea from a year ago. That's the Jermaine Matthews concept from a year ago, where like they played enough that you have an idea of what they are. It doesn't mean they're full-fledged established guys where when we get to June and July and everybody's putting out their best 100 players in college football list and Peyton Pierce is going to be like 23rd on it. No, but he's played enough that you have a good idea of what he could be if it pops, versus the guy's just been developing as a full-time backup. And because there's a recruiting name by him, all of a sudden we're just supposed to think he's good. No, we have good reason to believe Peyton Pierce is good because, as Stefan just said, he's made big plays in big moments in big games. So now it's like, okay, you did that in 10 snaps. What can you do with 50? What can you do with 70 snaps? And I think that's why Peyton Pierce is such an intriguing one. Ryan Grady is more the idea. But even then, he flashed enough that they felt like that idea was worth investing in, which is why Zion Grady is one of the people still here.
I think another thing that's interesting, too, like talking about taking advantage of the opportunities he's got, sample size matters in this, but like he was, I think, 6th or 7th on the roster in terms of tackles this season with 44. This stat might not mean anything. In terms of like relative to snaps played, he had a tackle on like 17% of the snaps that he played. Like Sonny Styles was around 13, Arvell was around 10. So it's like, again, your numbers called, not a ton of snaps, but when you were out there, you're getting tackles. You were making plays.
And granted, the snap counts don't include special team snaps. And I'm pretty sure.
Just looking at defensive snaps.
Yeah. But even with that, like, I mean, how many tackles do you get on special teams? Let's just say you say you had 44 snaps. Okay, maybe that's responsible for 5 of them. So the other 39 still came in actual football time. That's still ridiculous.
Well, Aaron Scott had all the tackles on special teams. So
yeah. And then Ryan Day said he was going to play more football, and then he didn't, and now he's an Oregon Duck. Look how that works. I'm going to save Devin Sanchez. In fact, if one of you wants to grab him later, it's fine. I'm going to have plenty of time in the next 9 months to talk about Devin Sanchez. I want to talk about somebody else in that same vein as Peyton Pierce, but maybe even more so. Gillis, one word that describes Houston's 2025 season.
That's a good question. Stefan, if you have a word, go.
Yeah, I'll go on those things. Underwhelming, frankly.
Okay.
Inconsistent. Underwhelming is a better word.
Slow. He played a lot of snaps against Texas. He played 39 snaps against Texas. That's the most snaps he played in any regular season game. In fact, in the regular season, the only other game he played more than 30 snaps was the Rutgers game, which I felt like in the moment was, man, they're like leaving Edric out there like a lot. And it felt like they were trying to get something going. And it kind of worked out there because then we got to the Michigan game, the Indiana game, and the Miami games. He was flashing all over the place. Edric Houston ends the year with 21 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and 9 pressures. I don't use the word underwhelming, Stefan, and I think, yeah, if we would have used those numbers, if I'd have told you that in June that those were going to be Edric Houston's numbers, I think the concern we had for the defensive tackle depth would have grown insurmountably in a way that I don't even know if telling you, hey, Cade McDonald's going to be the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year would have calmed those nerves for you at that point. Because, like, okay, yeah, they don't play one defensive tackle, Steven. So, like, you want me to just be excited about one guy? We thought they had 2. And now you're telling me they have 1, and then that's kind of it? Now, the emergence of Taiwan Malone as a quality option and Will Smith giving them maybe some opportunities as well helped offset that a little bit. Plus, when they went on third down, they were taking defensive tackles off the field anyway. But whether it's the injury he suffered the first day of fall camp, some of the weird penalties he was having, the snap infractions and the encroachment penalties and stuff, like in the rough and the passer penalties he was having earlier in the year, it just didn't look right to start the year. 39 snaps against Texas where they kept it real tight everywhere. 10 against Grambling because they won 70-0. 18 against Ohio, 13 against Washington, 17 against Minnesota, 25 against Wisconsin. He missed the Illinois game. 20 against Penn State. It's like, okay, he's starting to ramp it up a little bit. 27 against Purdue, where they left him out there again because I think it was just an opportunity to get him experience. 19 against UCLA, 34 against Rutgers, 21 against Michigan, 31 against Indiana. And then he started against Miami. That was the first notable game he had started. He started against Purdue, too, because I think Taiwan Malone didn't play. But fully healthy roster, he started the first 2 games of the season and then did not start again until the Miami game. And I think, Stefan, you pointed out to me like, hey, Edric's out there starting. And then he played 50 snaps. And I felt like you felt him for like 40 of those snaps. And I remember, and I've rewatched that game a couple of times, and I'm like, that's the execution we thought we were getting at the start of the year. So my word is slow because it took a while to get there. And I can't wait to get into the spring and talk with him because I don't know, did it maybe not click right away? Because we got to remember that Purdue game when he started was officially a year into his defensive tackle transition. So it's not like he had still been playing the position less than a year when the season started. So was it that? Some of the undisciplined stuff? Like what was that? Do you feel like the leg injury in fall camp maybe slowed some momentum you had been building through spring and through summer workouts, and now all of a sudden you're not full go? And I know he was out there the very next day, but we all saw he was like standing around for a lot of the practices. So did that maybe set you back? And so you didn't necessarily get off to the right start to start the year, and then you play 39 stops against Texas because it's like, listen, Edric, we can't take you and Caden off the field right now. It's the number 1, number 3 matchup. You have to play. So just give it all you got, and then we'll ramp you back down and let you figure it out from there. And by Miami, where you've gone through the entire season and they had 30 days off almost, we got the best version of Edric Houston. And it reminds me a little bit of Jeff Okudah in 2018. If you go remember, Jeff Okudah wasn't awesome in 2018. He didn't play in a way that suggested, oh, this guy might win the Thorpe in a year and he might be the number 3 pick in the NFL draft his sophomore year as a 5-star recruit. But something about that Rose Bowl against Washington where he really flashed. And then the rest is history. And I'm wondering if that Miami game can be the same vein as Edric. So while he's not breakout candidate in terms of, I think if you're in the Ohio State bubble, your relation to him, right? The same way that Zion Grady is like, he's going to go from like unknown commodity who's like a recruiting concept to now he's an impact player. or Peyton Pierce is a guy in year 3 who's like, I spent 2 years in the background, and if you really, really follow Ohio State football, you know who I am. But the average person doesn't know who I am. And we leave Austin, Texas, and it's like, man, how did the Longhorns let that kid get out of Texas? You mean to tell me he wasn't even going to come in as a recruit because he was either going to go to Notre Dame or Ohio State? That's ridiculous. What happened here? I think Edricks is a little more, I'm trying to think, like Jeff Okudah is just like the example that's just popping in my head of like, maybe even in a loss, that Miami game finally clicked something for him. And now we're going to get the best possible version of what Edric Houston as a 3-tech looks like.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, me using underwhelming as a word might be kind of harsh, but it's like,
no, it's true.
But I think it's underwhelming because of us. Like we were ready to put high expectations on Edric Houston, and we had high expectations for Edric Houston, and that maybe glosses over the fact that he had a sophomore season that was pretty good, and maybe a sophomore season you expect from a lot of guys. And year 3 is actually the breakout year, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So it's like it's underwhelming in the sense of like we thought year 2 was when he would make that jump to all Big Ten, and it's just like, what if it's just delayed a year? What if it's just a year later than we all expected? And Ohio State was fine on defense to be able to work around, him figuring things out and finding, whether it's your word, Andrew, finding some consistency, or your word, Stephen, of just slowly coming along and eventually getting there. He got there, right? Like in the biggest game of the season, he showed up. Like he is not the reason that they lost to Miami in the Cotton Bowl. So yeah, I mean, props to Edric Houston. Like he stayed on the track. I think it would be easy to have gotten dejected early in the year, and we just never really see him again. And he ends up transferring, and that's the end of Edric's career at Ohio State. He stuck with it, and he's coming back now. And when I wrote about the breakout players, like I wrote how he maybe doesn't fit the traditional mold of a breakout guy because he did enter 2025 as a starter. He did start some big games. He played a lot of snaps in some big games. So it's like if you watch Ohio State football pretty consistently, you know who Edric Houston is. Like he's not catching you by surprise, but he might have a breakout season nationally, right? Where I don't know, if you cover Alabama or if you cover Cal football, you might not know who Edric Houston is right now. And then you get to the playoff and Ohio State's facing ACC champ Cal in the playoff, and it's like everyone knows who Edric Houston is. Your eyes got big, Steven. I don't know. You can't rule it out.
Call it a shot.
Cal just produced the Heisman quarterback at a number 1 overall pick, so I guess they at least know what they're doing at that position because they got that kid coming back, right? Whose name no one can pronounce. At quarterback.
That like started over Devin Brown. Yeah, The thing is, I don't know if it's crazier that you said it or if it's crazier the fact that you said a team that is located on the Pacific coastline could win the Atlantic Coastal Conference.
Yeah, when I was in Miami, they had one of those ACC commercials again. And it was like, when we proudly go coast to coast. And I'm like, that's literally not what your name says. Like, you're not supposed to proudly go coast to coast. You can go from like Northeast Atlantic coast to like Southeast Atlantic coast, but you're not supposed to go coast to coast. Anyways, the point is, Edric Houston, I think I use underwhelming in the sense of like we had very high expectations for him. That does not mean that his breakout season could just be delayed a year longer than we expected, and it's still coming. Like the special performance is still there, and like a potential, first round caliber guy is still in there.
Andrew, let's have a small conversation real quick, not a large one, because I do think this is when we get into the depths of off season, maybe in May. I want to have a week where we just go review Ryan Day's recruiting classes and like the evolution of them, especially this 2025 class, because I just feel like it's the epitome of what this new era of college football is, in that you just can't. Jeremiah Smith, Edric Houston, Mylan Graham, Aaron Scott. It's 4 5-star recruits in a class that was ranked 3rd overall and had 22 commits in it. The other top 100 recruits are Aaron Nolan, Bryce West, James Peoples, Garrett, and that's it. That's the top 100 recruits. And then you had Garrett Stover, Dominic Kirks, Ian Moore, Peyton Pierce were all top 200 recruits. Okay, JJ is JJ. Mm-hmm. Edric we're still talking about him in this breakout. He seems to be on like a normal development path. Mylan Graham is a fighting Irish. Aaron Scott is a Duck. Aaron Nolan is, I don't remember if he's found a new plus. Yeah, he's a Memphis Tiger. Bryce West is a Wisconsin Badger. James Peoples is a Penn State Nittany Lion. I got like, maybe we don't have to have a big conversation, but it's just, I don't know, like this 2025 class is entering 2024 class, excuse me, is entering what is supposed to be like their go get it year. Like they're supposed to be the heart of a team at this point. There's only 2 of these guys where we're like 100% sure about what they are, and that's Jeremiah Smith and that's Jalen McClain, who was 375 and 36 among safeties. Everybody else, I mean, even their punter, Nick McClarty, is gone. He's at Arizona State at this point. Like, what are we supposed to make very quickly? And we can have a deeper conversation about this in like May, but what are we supposed to make of what this class ended up being now that they have reached a point where we're supposed to be looking at most of these guys and going, you're starters, and most of them are not even here. And the ones that are here outside of two names, we are still very much up in the air about whether or not they're going to be impact players here at the level that maybe their recruiting ranking suggested they could be.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I wrote about this for the site earlier this week. Like, I don't think that there's like a right answer for any of this. Like, should you take less? Should you take more? Should you take that? Like, I don't think that there's a locked in, this is the correct way to do it. I think if I had to put a word on it, would be like unfulfilled, because you did have a really strong recruiting class, but those guys are gone. Now, are those guys gone because Ohio State didn't want to pay them the money because they didn't think they were worth it and it was like a misevaluation? Like, that's the interesting conversation in this recruiting world to me is, okay, Aaron Scott was a 5-star corner, 6'2", 200 pounds, from Ohio. We know the backstory. Is that a misevaluation of, we didn't want to pay him because we don't think he's that good? Or is that other schools willing to pay him because he's going to play more there over here, and we are shifting our philosophy? It's an interesting kind of look, because I think it varies. Like, I think, there are certain situations like a Mylan Graham where he hasn't really done much yet, and if another school wants to pay him, good luck. But I think there's, other things where it's like Aaron Scott and it's a new world that I'm very, very interested to look in on, and it's going to be hard to it's going to be hard to try and, map out this and lay this all out, because I think it depends. I think there's an evaluation question where if Ohio State thought Aaron Scott was the next, first round corner, like if they thought that he was going to be a locked in starter this year, they would have paid him. Like they're not letting that guy go to Oregon. If they thought Mylan Graham was going to be Garrett Wilson this year, like locked in, no doubt, this guy's a superstar, first round pick, they wouldn't have let him leave and go to Notre Dame. Like, it's an interesting conversation that we need to have at some point, because like I said, I think there's a reasonable case to be made for, sometimes guys are just going to want to play and guys are just going to want to get paid and you got to let them go. And other times there's, hey, was this guy just not the 32nd ranked player in the country in his class?
And I'm using that class, and now I'm coming up with a story idea in the middle of the podcast. I'm just coming up, because it's not, 23 was kind of like this too, right? Like Carnell Tate was the one that we were like 100% sure about what he was at that point. And even then, right, he went from kind of like a third option to being a second option, right? Like Arvell Reese was still an idea. Austin Sierraville was still an idea. Montgomery was still an idea. Brandon Ennis is still an idea. 2022, that class kind of just completely fell apart. By the time they got to their senior year, there were like 7 of them left here. Like the 2021 class was the last time we had a group here where you left sophomore year and you were like, okay, there's something here with a bunch of guys. Okay, yeah, that's a story idea. I'm just going to write that down. Maybe ask Ryan Day about it at some point. Because, I mean, listen, how many times are you going to ask him about Julian Sand this offseason? Like, what? Hey, Julian. Sure, but like the questions are going to be some combination of, hey, he's older. Can you put more on his plate now? What are you letting him do that you didn't let him do last year? Hey, Ryan, this is the 3rd time in your career that you had a returning starting quarterback. What's the difference between this time and the last 2 times you had it? Hey, Ryan, like, is Julian Sand becoming more of a leader now? Does he have more command? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, listen, we can play bingo with the questions for Julian Sand. We can play bingo with the questions for JJ. Hey, is JJ talking more? Is he being more of a vocal leader? Hey, Tyler Bowen, what's your offensive line look like? Am I wrong? Am I hitting all the go-to ones? All the hits? Yeah, it's like
the fans, things along those lines.
Yeah, message to the fans. It's like the Ohio State beat. You remember when we were kids and they had the commercials where they would show like, hey, you can get these like albums. Yeah, you know the commercials I'm talking about, where it's like, hey, you can get all the greatest hits on one album right now, and it'd be like the commercials like 1:30 in the morning where you're not supposed to be up, but you're up and it wakes you up. That's what the Ohio. Yeah. That's the Ohio State beat. And sometimes in the offseason, in terms of what our questions are, because there's no football, and so it's just a lot of concepts. And I think a lot of them are great. I'm not like saying shame on us beats. I think it's great. but also, I don't know, sometimes you're just trying to think of things outside the box. And I think it's been interesting, the fact that using education as an example, this 24 class is maybe the third straight class in a row where we are heading into a year where in the past, your third year guys are kind of like the engine behind your team. And now as the sport is getting older, is that still true? In a world where the national championship was between a fourth year quarterback who's on his second school and his third year as a starter, and a seventh year quarterback who's on his second school and fourth year as a starter or something like that. And Indiana was old, and Ohio State was old when they won, and Michigan was old. Is that still like that pattern of like, okay, your freshman year, you're learning, you're on special teams as a highly rated recruit. Your sophomore year, you carve out a role, whether you're a starter or a co-starter. In year 3, you go crazy. Sure, there's still some kids who are like that. Right? Like Cardell Tate was like that. Right? There's been other kids who have been like that. Arvell Reese was essentially like that, right? But for every one of those kids, there's like a Sonny Styles who's here for 4 years. There's a Jack Sawyer or a JT Tuimoloau who was here for 4 years. And I almost wonder, it's not about, oh, is this class disappointing because we're heading into year 3 and these guys, we still don't know about them or they're not even here anymore. It's like, hey, should we change our like mental in terms of like how we view what development looks like, especially in this world where the sport is getting older. So it's not as easy for the 18, 19-year-old to pop immediately, which is also why we hold so dearly when a Jeremiah Smith happens, when a Malachi Tony happens, because it's even more rare today than it was in that little window between like 2016 to 2022 when it felt like there were a lot of dudes who were showing up at college football and they were just ready to go immediately. But that's because you were an 18-year-old trying to play against 18 to 23-year-olds, not an 18-year-old trying to play against 18 to 29-year-olds. Okay, that was 40 minutes. Let's take a break and then we can go through this list one more time here.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the personal price plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Whether you bond over streaming binge-worthy videos, watching sports recaps, video gaming, or by unplugging altogether, the 2026 Lincoln Nautilus Hybrid helps keep you connected throughout your journey. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Available connectivity features and functionality vary by model. Package pricing, trials, and term lengths vary by model. Video streaming and games are only available while parked.
They always tell you there's a catch, a compromise, an asterisk. Terms apply. See store for details. May be less than advertised. May vary by mood. Probably. Sprite Zero Sugar? It's different. It's the lemon lime flavored refreshment you want with zero sugar. So, no fast voice? No caveats. Just refreshment. This is Sprite Zero Sugar. Obey your thirst.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Mean, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. I don't have any more soliloquies in me. I promise. No more soliloquies in me. At least, I don't know. If it's a good conversation, I'll come up with a soliloquy. Stefan, another breakout candidate. Who you got?
Yeah, let's switch over to the offensive side of the ball, I guess, because there are some breakout candidates over there as well.
I don't know if we purposely all did defense. It just kind of worked out that way.
I think, there's more returning starters on offense. Probably, your whole offensive line in theory is coming back. Quarterback's coming back. Your starting running back's coming back. Jeremiah Smith is Jeremiah Smith. Brandon Ennis is coming back. Although I guess you could do Brandon Ennis as a breakout player. I'm going to go along the offensive line. I think Ian Moore is going to end up being a starter for this team. And I think between Austin Sareveld and Philip Daniels and Josh Padilla, we'll figure out, who's starting on the right side of the line. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because I guess Austin Sareveld could stay at left tackle and Ian Moore could be a right tackle. But I think at the end of the day, Ian Moore is going to be a starting tackle for this team. I mean, he fits the mold. He's got the size. And I think we saw enough from him against Purdue and in the second half against Miami, where if he has a strong offseason, I think Ohio State would trust him to start against Ball State and then Texas early in the season. Another highly recruited guy, is on that development track. And I think we saw glimpses of it just throughout 2025 that tells you like this is a dude who's ready to do it. And I think that was a guy who we kind of had circled, as we got through the offseason, a year ago, and we're wondering to ourselves, like, all right, like Austin Saraveld's getting reps at tackle, Phil Daniels getting reps at tackle. What does that tell us about Ohio State's tackle development? Right? Like Ethan Owinyawa's not there. Obviously, he's not a guy who was in the program for a while, but you got him out of the portal and he wasn't ready to start for you. Ian Moore was not ready to start for you, to the point where you had two guys who I think we would both kind of label as guards move into the outside and playing right tackle for you, right? I think Philip Daniels had a little bit of experience with it at Minnesota. Obviously, Austin Saravel had no experience at tackle. We were having conversations where it's like, what is happening with development of offensive tackle, and why is a guy like Ian Moore not ready to start? And it's just one of those things where it's kind of like with Edric Houston, maybe it just takes a little more time. But by the time you're going into the 2026 season, they're ready to go. And I think that's where Ian Moore kind of is. So I had him on my list. I'm picking him here because I'm marking down that Ian Moore is going to be a starting tackle for this team. We'll see how the rest of it shakes out. If I were to predict, I think as I did when we did our depth chart, I said it would be Ian Moore, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, Josh Padilla, and then Austin Saravel at right tackle, I think is how I had it, or maybe the tackles were switched. Regardless, I'm pretty confident Ian Moore is going to be a starting tackle for this team, and I like what he brings in terms of size, and then obviously in terms of a little bit of production and experience that he's got. I think, like, if you were to take silver linings from the loss against Miami and obviously everything that went wrong in that game, obviously you don't root for injuries, but like you find silver linings when things happen, right? Like going into 2024 season, what was the silver lining of literally everyone in the offensive line room being sick during fall camp? Is that when you got to the season, there was guys ready to play for you because they got a lot of reps in fall camp because the entire offensive line room was sick during camp. I think one of the silver linings of Austin Saravel going down in that game against Miami is that Ian Moore was forced to play left tackle against probably the best defensive line in college football last year. Pat Coogan after the Indiana game was like, yeah, those dudes were monsters. Like going up against them was very difficult. They're the toughest unit that they'd faced that year. Like Ian Moore, I think gave up one pressure or no pressure, whatever it was.
One pressure
in the second half. Like he played really well. And that's something that maybe you walk away and go to the offseason and say, hey, we had a dude who at least, for a half against the best defensive line in the country held up and did okay. So I think he's going to end up being a starting tackle for this team, and we'll see how the rest of the offensive line shakes up.
That's most of your guys' question. I was going to go with Ian Moore if I didn't pick Edric Houston because I was thinking about that. It's just like he played 70 pass blocking snaps and he gave up one pressure, and one pressure came against Miami, and it was a sack pressure, but still, everybody gave up sacks to Miami apparently in the college football playoff. Did Miami's performance in the national championship game against Indiana, even a loss, did that at all impact how you viewed Ohio State's offensive line in terms of their performance in that game?
I guess maybe a little bit, because like Miami did that from the first game of the season to the last game of the season. They won the line of scrimmage against Notre Dame. They won the line of scrimmage against Indiana. They won the line of scrimmage against Ohio State. I thought they won the line of scrimmage against Ole Miss. Like Miami did that in its biggest games of the year. I think it's fair to say they were just better than Ohio State. But also, we did go into the pod, and I think all three of us, when we said, like, which group is better, O-line or D-line? Ohio State O-line, Miami D-line. I think we all said Miami's defensive line was better. Yeah. So, like, it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but I think it definitely, I would say this, it provides context to be like, hey, they whipped Ohio State's butt, but they also beat everybody else they played to varying degrees. Now, whether you want to say it was worse against Ohio State or what, that's up for debate. Like they did beat everybody they played at the last year.
I guess context is maybe a good word for it, but it's like you look at Indiana's offense, you look at Ohio State's offense. Those are two of the better units in the country this year, and you have to take into account that Indiana had a blocked punt go for a touchdown. Like Miami gave up what would have been 20 points to that Indiana offense. Like that, there was a large stretch there early in the second half where like Indiana couldn't do anything because they were trying to get the run game going because they knew they couldn't get the pass game going because of the pressure that was going to be on Fernando Mendoza because of that defensive line. So yeah, I think when you look at the number one team in the country and they even had some struggles with that, I think that does provide some context, and it at least makes me walk away. Like I think there was a moment in that Miami game where I looked over at you, Steven, and I was like, are we sure it's a good thing that Ohio State has, 4 or 5 starters coming back on the offensive line? And I think watching that game against Indiana kind of makes you take a step back and be like, okay, that was not the norm throughout the season. Sure, it wasn't a great performance, and maybe it makes you a little bit uneasy, but you can at least point at it and say 2 first-round picks on that defensive line made life really difficult. You give this unit another offseason to prepare, I think you're going to be all right.
I think the Indiana game still alarms me because that was more schematically done. Indiana throws a lot at you, and I think it was a result of Julian got hit a couple times, and he's a young quarterback, and he had never really been hit like that, and he was rattled. And the offensive line had not really been schemed up like that. But I don't think there had been a defensive coordinator to that point who had done things to Ohio State's offense where it was like, oh, they're getting out coached and they're getting outplayed. Not even outplayed, out coached and out schemed against Indiana. They just weren't better than Miami. And I think watching Fernando Mendoza get harassed like that, I think like Holly Rowe had a picture of his arm after that game. Dude. And I know there were some hits that Cignetti he'll probably bring it up at the parade. Like, hey, I'm all for letting them play, but you got to call it when they cross the line. But Julian Sand was under pressure for 42.5% of his snaps, of his dropbacks against Miami. Fernando Mendoza was under pressure for 34.4% of his dropbacks. Julian Sand still manage to get 12 throws off of it. He only completed 5 of them. So like make of it what you want to make of it. And PFF needs to like alter this stuff a little bit because I think they include like screens as you getting pressured because his one pick is included in the pressure. So he wasn't pressured. He just threw a bubble screen and the dude jumped it. But I guess whatever. Like Fernando Mendoza was getting pressured and not getting the ball off. He had 11 dropbacks where he was pressured and he only got the ball off 6 times and only completed 3 of them. So watching that Miami defensive line, and there's a clip going around Twitter of Carter Smith just getting ragdolled by Mesidor. And then there's another snap where it's the most glorious pass rush I have ever seen by 2 people in my life, where Mesidor and Ruben Bain both win at the same time, and they are racing to get to Fernando Mendoza. Fernando got the ball off, but he still paid a hefty price for being the quarterback that those 2 were going up against. And it's that snap that I realized, yeah, there was nothing Tyler Bowen was going to be able to do to get these dudes ready to play Miami's defensive line. Like, Miami's team, I don't think was that good last year. But when you have 4 dudes up front who can do that, you can win any football game.
The game is about blocking and tackling.
But it was Miami was the game is about blocking and tackling team in college football.
And they were 40 yards away from winning a national championship.
Yes.
It was blocking and tackling going head to head with RPO and back shoulder, which concept was going to win. I also saw Fernando after the game. He was not moving around well. Like it was like this dude just got rocked for 4 hours.
Holly Rowe was like zooming in on his elbow, like telling the ESPN cameras, like, look at his arm, and his arm was like literally like black. He was on like CBS and the Today Show and stuff like that on Friday morning, and his lip is like busted.
So they need to change some things and maybe rearrange some things on the offensive line and whatnot. But I guess if we were at red alert 9 out of 10, this is a problem after the Cotton Bowl ended, like right after it. By the end of the national championship game, I was like, okay, this is why they didn't go after anybody new in the portal, because you can't overreact. They need to coaching and scheme needs to be better, but that's not personnel. They need to do things better. Their offense can't be run it on first down, run it on second down, play action, throw a deep ball, and that's kind of it. There has to be some diversity to how they go about things offensively, and maybe you rearrange some things on the offensive line personnel wise. But that Miami game drastically just changed how I viewed Ohio State's offensive line, because it's like if the bar is the offensive line wasn't good because they couldn't block those 2, okay, the team who just went 16-0 couldn't block those 2. Which is why, how the heck did this team lose 2 games, man? Because Carson Beck can't stop throwing picks. You know what? Miami is the Houston Texans. And you're just asking your quarterback, can you please stop making mistakes and get out of the way of the defense? And in both situations, the quarterback said, no, I'm going to keep doing it.
When you said that, have you ever seen those memes on Twitter where it's like when you were a little kid and you had to walk into your parents' room and say, I threw up again?
Yeah.
And the kid is just standing in the that's Carson Beck, where it's like the parents are just taking care of everything. And the kid's like, I did it again, guys. I'm sorry.
Oh, I got a perfect example. So I've been dealing with a cat who has, I'm just going to let you into my personal life because why not? I'm going to always let you. No, I'm not going to always let you into my personal life. So a couple of nights ago, our cat puked at like 2:30 in the morning, and cats puke, and so we're like, whatever, it's fine. She's walking around fine. It's whatever. About an hour and a half later, she puked again. And if they puke twice, you got to go to the vet at that point, because now it's, puking is a violent thing. We've all puked before. It's a very violent experience. So we take her to the vet. We're at the vet for like 7 hours. I didn't get back to my house until like 8:30, 9:30 in the morning. And we're thinking everything is all good. Okay, we'll give her this medicine. We'll keep an eye on her. That's what it is. 48 hours later, she pukes again. And so now we're looking at each other like, what the heck is going on with the cat? And so that's what I've been dealing with, the puking and the other things that I'm not going to get into. But the point of the matter is, yeah, my cat right now is Carson Beck as Miami's quarterback. And every couple of hours, she's doing things right now where I'm like, can you just not do these things? And everything will be fine. Can you just take the medicine, eat your wet food, and keep it pushing? And every like 45 minutes, she's like, no, I can't do that. I did it again. And it's like, oh, okay, now I know how Miami's defensive line feels. So shout out to Miami's defensive line. I mean, yes, Ian Moore.
I like that as an Ohio State pod, we agreed we'll say Carson Beck and then we'll just say the Houston Texans and not mention who the guy in trouble in this conversation is.
Oh, CJ Stroud. Yeah, well, I'll say. I don't
we
know
also
what
related
happened to
Carson
CJ.
Beck to vomit in an indirect way.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening with CJ. The conversation around him has gone way too far out there, and we're not an NFL podcast, so I'm not going to deep dive into that. But it's just, I'm confused how a dude went from I can't throw picks ever. His rookie year has turned into I'm going to throw picks and I'm going to make a lot of bad decisions. It's interesting though, the parallels of, I'm ranting again. See, this is your fault, Stefan. I wasn't going to talk about CJ Stroud. Now here I am talking about CJ. I think it's intriguing that Ryan Day and CJ Stroud together in Columbus were so awesome together, and their defense never helped them, and they had these horrid defenses, and now both of them have elite defenses, and they don't know what to do on offense because one keeps forcing and trying to play Superman, and the other one's like, I don't have to do anything anymore because my defense is going to hold teams at 12 points. Gillis, who's your guy?
That was the Ian Moore segment of the podcast.
Ian Moore is going to be great. Ian Moore is going to be great. Yes.
Yeah, Ian Moore was on my list, but fine. I'll do it. I'll be brave. Ohio State has a 5-star receiver who's an incoming freshman who might be good. Chris Henry Jr. Brave.
It's the most
I think he's a little bit
on this podcast.
What's that?
It's the most boring take I've ever heard on this podcast.
I know, but like,
what with the 5-star recruit who like made a big deal because he almost flipped and got $2 million.
Right. It's like, yeah, but like, here's the thing. It's like the 2023 class had Brendan Ennis and Carnell Tate and Noah Rogers in it.
Sure.
But the 2023 team had Marv and Emeka and Julian Fleming as their number 1, 2, 3 receivers. Like they were kind of like locked in. Like whenever we kind of asked about like Julian Fleming, they were just like, Julian is the greatest blocking receiver that we've ever seen, and he does everything right. And Julian was also kind of banged up. Like it was also kind of one of like Julian, his body just kind of started to fade as his career went on.
Carnell Tate has been awesome as a blocker the last 2 years.
Yes, of course. Mecca was obviously banged up, but like in the quarterback situation, I know people feel a certain type of way about Kyle McCord. Like there was like a lot of, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. 2024, I don't care who you brought in. You had Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate as your 1, 2, 3. And I know JJ was a freshman, but you cannot compare other freshmen to JJ because that's unfair. So even for a guy like Mylan Graham was a summer enrollee. Like that wasn't going to happen. It was just a different set of circumstances. And even in, you go to 2025, it's JJ, it's Carnell, it's Ennis. That's second year. That's third year. That's third year. And then there was Mylan Graham. Quincy Porter was hurt. Like this to me feels like a really good situation of opportunity meets talent. And I know the whole thing, like I kind of made the sarcastic comment at the beginning about like age is all that matters now. Talent is irrelevant. But like, I think this is a very interesting conversation. Like, would you I was on another pod this week and I said, like, would you rather have Chris Henry Jr. for 2025 and lock that in and get him in your program and then you just kind of have to pay to keep him? Or would you rather pay for Nick Marsh like Indiana did? Like, it's an interesting conversation. And Chris Henry Jr. has an opportunity that not a lot of freshman 5-star receivers have had at Ohio State because maybe in another year, what if Quincy Porter was still here, how are we talking about it? If Mylan Graham was like, if both those guys were still here, let alone one of them, if both of them were still here, I don't think we're like locking in Chris Henry Jr. to anything. And maybe they don't bring in the portal guys, but we would be saying, okay, well, Quincy Porter was hurt all year, and like he did kind of show some stuff, and they do really like him. So like maybe Quincy Porter is your outside guy. It's, JJ and Porter out wide, and then Ennis is in the slot, and then there's your receiving core. And Henry Jr., maybe he's just good enough to where they have to rotate him in, but is he taking over for anybody? Like there's all these conversations, and there's a path now that maybe has not existed. So I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that Chris Henry Jr. is, not only a starter, plays well, considering the type of receiver he is. Like, I'm not trying to, put any more undue expectations on him, but like, he is 6'6". That's just not a frame that Ohio State has had in quite some time at receiver. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to go out there and have 900 yards and 80 catches.
I'm going to make you put a break, because this is a 5-star recruit who is stepping into a role where, like, it's not going to be, if he's starting on day one, no one's going to be like, whoa, Chris Henry Jr. starting. What does breakout look like for a 5-star recruit who is walking into a room where there is a starting outside wide receiver spot with potentially his name on it if he wants it?
55 catches, I think.
Okay.
Because you got JJ, and then you also have Ennis coming back too.
Sure.
So I think like 55 catches. I think where you might see the breakout, quote unquote, is in the red zone. Like for all the red zone problems that this team had this year, he might be your answer for that. Where, hey, we're going to put JJ and Chris on one side of the field and on the other side of the field, and we're just going to throw it up. Because one of them is Jeremiah Smith, and the other one is taller and longer and more athletic than everybody else. So go get it. Go get balls. See ball, get balls. Chris Henry Jr. could have a big role on this team in a couple of different ways. And I think for the first time in my time covering this team and on this podcast, there's like a legitimate pathway for a 5-star that he doesn't really have to like break in. Like JJ's a different beast. Like JJ's a different animal. But like Chris Henry Jr. is, your kind of average run-of-the-mill 5-star, which is crazy to say, but he is not generational, but he can play at Ohio State in his first year.
So the Henry kids have a podcast, and it's actually pretty decent. It's a decent listen. They did a documentary. I hope they clip you saying that.
Wait, which part? That I think he's going to break out, or that he's not generational?
No, the average 5-star part.
Yeah. Oh, he's simply an average top 30 player in college in the recruiting class. My apologies. I just predicted him to be a breakout player. He's gonna.
I don't know why you're mad at me. I don't know you don't know how athletes work. They don't care about the compliment, man. Yeah. They care that you just called them average.
Kirby the biased Smart fake liberal media called him one of the average of the.
Yeah.
What's that, Stefan?
So Kirby Smart heard someone say that his team was going to go 7-5. That they'll find something.
Yeah.
I remember in 2018, after Ohio State won the Big Ten championship game, they were all walking around the field talking about how they were picked 4th in the Big Ten that year. Like, I don't know why. You're getting mad at me. I'm just like, we know how athletes work. This is what they do. So yeah,
Chris Henry Jr. very good at football.
No, it's too late. He's not hearing that part. They've already turned off the podcast. They got what they needed. You called him an average run-of-the-mill 5-star. That's the narrative, and that's what they're going to run with. It's not the fact that you're like literally picking him to be a breakout candidate this year. It's not Chris. Everybody's going to do that. We would do that. Everybody hears when people doubt them, even if it's not even real doubt. It's just like, can you take that much of an edge to do something? Stefan, what do you think of this one, the Chris Henry Jr. one? And I know you included him on your list, so maybe this is a 1 versus 2 situation here. I think he would have. I don't know if I saw enough from Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham last year that if they were still here, I wouldn't be saying, hey, if Chris Henry Jr. is a starter this year, I'm not going to be shocked. So
when he signed, I said, is Chris Henry Jr. going to start opposite of Jeremiah Smith? And I think you were like, well, I guess Quincy Porter is still part of that conversation. And we kind of looked at each other. We're like, well, yeah, he could probably start.
Yeah.
And that's not like, listen, Quincy Porter, and when he was healthy and got his opportunities, was good. I think Quincy Porter is going to be pretty damn good at Notre Dame with CJ Carr throwing in the ball. There was definitely an open door to where Chris Henry Jr. was just going to be even better. So I could see it. Yards and receptions, like in his freshman year, we'll see what it looks like. I kind of want to see what this offense looks like, to be quite honest with you. But like, if he walks away with, let's say it's like 40 catches for like 600 yards, like, okay, like decent numbers, but he has like 11 touchdowns, would not be surprised because of what Gillis said of just like the height and throw it up to him and let him get his touchdowns and let him be, kind of your X factor in the red zone. So, or your answer in the red zone. I think he was going to compete for a starting spot the moment he signed with Ohio State. Was Quincy Porter going to make it tougher to get that starting spot? Yeah, absolutely. Does Quincy Porter leaving make it easier to maybe get that starting spot? Yeah, absolutely. Could he have beaten out Quincy Porter anyways? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm all in on Chris Henry Jr. having a big freshman season.
I mean, if we're going to be technical about this, like there's a lot of similarities between Carnell Tate and Quincy Porter's freshman years here. In terms of what their role was, like, and what it could have potentially been. Like, I don't think Carnell was 100% healthy the entire 2023 season, which probably played a little bit of a role, but we also got to see him a little bit, right? Like, he played against Penn State. He played against Purdue. We got to see him make a couple of plays. We just never got to see Quincy Porter in those moments. Had Quincy Porter been healthy, I'm pretty sure he would have been starting opposite of Jeremiah Smith against UCLA and against Purdue. I'm pretty confident about those things. I'm pretty confident he would have started against Rutgers when Carnell and JJ were both out. And then we'll see from there. Carnell started in 2024, but if we're going to be real about it, he did get jumped by a true freshman. Carnell's going to be an X receiver in the NFL. At no point in his career here has he ever been the X receiver because a true freshman showed up who was amazing. Now, granted, it was maybe a little bit smoother, and it didn't matter because the number one receiver in the room, the old guy in the room, was a slot, so you just started him and Carnell. But if JJ would have flipped to Miami on signing day, Carnell would have been their starting X receiver in 2024. But he didn't flip to Miami, so Carnell spent his career here as a Z, and JJ's the X. And obviously in 25, they were all over the place in 2025. But so like the idea of, man, you're a really good football player, but there's a true freshman behind you who's pretty awesome, who might jump you. And in this situation, the old guy in the room is an outside receiver. So it wouldn't be as fluid as just like, oh, we're just going to start all three of them. You're going to start three dudes who are 6'4" and taller. I would if this were a video game, but it's not a video game. This is real life. So I'm not going to rule out based on what I saw from Mylan Graham and what I saw from Quincy Porter. And Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter might go to Notre Dame, and CJ Carr might break every passing record Notre Dame has. Like that's obviously a potential because their schedule also sucks. I don't know. Like I'm not gonna be shocked if Chris Henry Jr. is their second best wide receiver next year. I'm not putting that on him to be that, but it's also, I don't know. You don't go out of your way the way Ryan Day had to make sure you held on to Chris Henry Jr. unless you know you got something special there. Because I don't think if this would have happened 2 years ago, I don't think JJ would have been a Buckeye. I think he would have flipped to Miami. If he found out the morning of that Brian Hartline was leaving for South Florida, I think he would have flipped back to Miami, which is interesting. You know what? I'm going to ask him that when we get to the spring because he's honest enough to answer it. Maybe. I guess we'll see. All right, fine. I was trying to not be the guy who picked Devin Sanchez, but I'm going to do it. It's fine. I'm picking Devin Sanchez. And it has nothing to do with his star rating. It's the fact that he played 323 snaps last year, which was the most of any true freshman on defense and the second most on the roster behind Bo Jackson on the roster, who was a starter by the end of the year. I don't know, man. I thought he was awesome against Miami. So it's less about the stars. I know I just picked 2 5-star recruits. I understand that. But I thought both Edric and Devin Sanchez, their last football game of the year, played in a way where it can jumpstart something. And both of those guys, not only do I feel confident it will jumpstart something, it absolutely needs to jumpstart something. Because it's Edric, it's time for Edric to turn into the player that he has the potential to be at Ohio State. And that doesn't mean that he's going to Arvell Reese this thing, and this time next year we're going to be going Edric is an awesome 3-tech who can also play outside. He can play in any scheme you want, and so he's going to be the 17th pick in the NFL draft. Maybe it's a big year that he comes back for a year 4, and then he's off to the NFL draft. And Devin Sanchez can't go pro next year. But Edric, it's time for him to turn into that. All the chips have been pushed into the middle of the table for Devin Sanchez. So it's I think he can do it. He also absolutely positively make or break type of year for the secondary for him to turn into the player that everybody seems to think he is. Because as Gillis said earlier, if they thought there are 2 cornerbacks from the state of Ohio, they let leave because of this kid. That's got to turn into something. And I think it will turn into something. I think he had some good moments. He had some bad moments. I thought he was very, very good against Miami. I think that tape favored him well. Even that, listen, man, every time somebody throws the ball down the field and it's a back shoulder, we can't say it's pass interference. You're underthrowing the wide receiver to try to draw a foul. You're doing what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does in the NBA. It's unethical hoops.
I was gonna say we need some ethical defense going on and some ethical
Yeah,
offensive
man.
routes
You
happening.
can't just back shoulder your way. I mean, apparently you can't just back shoulder your way to a national championship because that's
Yeah, but they caught him. They were catching back shoulder.
yeah.
passes.
No, I
They
get
weren't just drawing penalty.
No, I agree. Well, I would say this. In 24, they were just throwing them to draw penalties.
Yeah.
25, they were throwing them to catch them, and they were getting a lot of free releases, and so they were able to do it. I do respect that. But, yeah, it's good coverage, man. It's contact sport. But Devin Sanchez, I think, is the most important. Not the most. He is one of the most important players on this team in 2025, and it's because of everything that has happened since the moment he committed to Ohio State. Him committing, Naeem flipping to Oregon, Aaron Scott and Bryce West being here, him jumping those two in his first year. Aaron Scott is now at Oregon, Bryce West now at Wisconsin. There's a lot that has happened over the last 24 months that has put Devin Sanchez in this position where nobody has said a word, and it's very clear how they feel about Devin Sanchez and his potential.
Well, I think another thing with Devin, too, it's, he played 323 snaps. Like he played a lot of football, but it wasn't even just a matter of, third corner, gets a lot of reps against, insert not great team name. He played 11 snaps against Texas. He played, he started and played 67 snaps against Luke Altmaier and Illinois. He played 16 snaps against Penn State, 8 snaps against Michigan, 5 against Indiana, 43 against Miami, right? Like he played in big moments, right? Like it's not that he's just coming back with, a mild level of experience to his name. He's coming back with experience against some of the best teams in college football last season, right? And he's, was it always good? No. But he's coming back with the experience of Indiana, the number 1 team in the country, throwing at him when he's on the field. He's coming back with the experience of UCLA attacking him when he's on the field, right? Like all that stuff goes a long way in the development of a player. And I would rather have a guy who struggled but got opportunities against Texas, Indiana, and Miami than have a guy coming back who played really well. And I look at his snap counts and they all came against Purdue and Rutgers. You know what I mean? Like I'll take the guy who struggled against high-level competition because Ohio State trusted him in those moments than a guy who was not trusted against high-level competition. So, yeah, I'm all in on Devin Sanchez. There were definitely moments, where you were left scratching your head wondering, okay, that's not exactly the best play in the world. Okay, he's a 5-star freshman who's learning on the go on a team that's competing for a national championship. So, yeah, I'm all in on Devin Sanchez, what he can do. And like you said, there is a lot on his plate. He's a starter. He's going to have to, kind of defend his side of the field. He is a guy that stayed in place, even though you lost, a pair of really talented corners in Bryce West and Aaron Scott and their local ties. They obviously trust him. They trusted him against Texas in game 1 of his college season. They trust him to be a starter going into 2026. And I think that speaks, very highly of what he should and could do this season.
Gillis, are you
of all the guys that we've mentioned, for 2026, is he the most likely to be an All-American?
So we're recording this on January 3rd, and you are getting it on Monday, January 26th. I think he's the safest pick right now because he's the only one where, well, no, I mean, Edric too, but I would say given the conversation that's going to be around him for the next 9 months, and for sure what his role is, yes.
Right, because Ian Moore is not guaranteed a starting spot. Chris Henry Jr., I guess, isn't guaranteed a starting spot. He's also a true freshman playing opposite of the best receiver in college football.
And Jeremiah Smith wasn't Smith wasn't a first-team All-American in year 1. So, yeah.
Who were the guys who mentioned Edric Houston?
Peyton Pierce.
Peyton, yeah, that's the only one that I think you can.
And I started with Zion Grady. Yeah, Peyton Pierce is maybe your best bet.
And even then, he's not 6'4", 235. So, a productive year for him probably looks a little different than Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese looked. He's more. I'm not saying that I think he's better than Tommy Eichenberg, but the concept of what he is as a linebacker is very similar in terms of play style and whatnot. But yeah, it's probably Devin, especially given who's on the schedule this year. Which, as people are listening to this on Monday, schedule comes out tomorrow. Finally. We get schedule. So we'll be talking about that later this week. That'll probably be the Wednesday pod, just reacting to schedule and how things shake out and what's ideal. I think the most ideal way for this to shake out is honestly similar to how it shook out this year, where there's big games on the schedule, but it feels like they're checkpoints and not just, hitting you in waves. Yeah, because even actually, you know what? I think Indiana's schedule in 2025 is probably ideal wait for Ohio State's schedule to look out, where it's like, okay, there's a small stretch in there where they're all winnable games, but it's not easy, right? But you feel like if you get through that and you look up in November, whether you're undefeated or you're 11-1, maybe even 10-2, it's like, okay, this is a playoff team who played some tough teams this year, but they're also battle tested, and they were not necessarily battle tested this year, unfortunately, because Texas didn't turn out to be as good as people thought, and Penn State didn't turn out to be as good as people. Their checkpoint games didn't turn out to be checkpoint games, other than for emotional reasons. And it would be nice if their checkpoint games this year were actual checkpoint games where we can learn something about this football team from an X's and O's, like on the field standpoint, and not just be having big picture conversations all the time. And since they've already beaten Michigan, we don't have to worry about that. And the Big Ten is better than the SEC, so that's not even a thing. Shout out to Paul Pine, bro. One other name, just because I have to say Riley Pettijohn's name on the podcast. That's it. It's just, there's no explanation. It's just Riley Pettijohn.
Nate Roberts. I almost said him.
Nate Roberts is a good one.
That is good.
Yeah, the names that I had on the list of 10 that we didn't mention were Riley Pettijohn, Josh Padilla, Isaiah West, and Phillip Bell. I'm intrigued by the idea of Phillip Bell, of like, if maybe he's just being forgotten, and what if he just has a really good offseason?
What if
I would have, go ahead, Sue.
He's just KJ Hill, where it takes a couple years for him to get on the field. Speaking of which, KJ Hill in the coaching ranks. He's at South Florida working for Brian. Brian Harmon's got a lot of Buckeyes. Like Toby Wilson is one of his offensive analysts, so it's a lot of Buckeyes down there.
Mike Saline, the former assistant O-line coach under Dustin Fry.
That one was not like the least shocking one, just because it's like,
yeah, but former Buckeye.
Yeah, but the other two played at Ohio State. Mike Saline just...
Well, he wore the block O, Stephen, so he's a former Buckeye in my book.
When that block O's on your chest, it just means a little bit more.
It just means more. That's Ohio State's famous saying.
Yeah, it's like playing in the Big Ten. It just matters a little bit more, Yeah, that's all I got. Schedule release this week. We've kind of hit that dead period in terms of, I don't know when the next time we talk to Ryan Day is. I know
we get to do the I don't know when the next time we're going to talk to someone is. We get to do the overanalyzing portion of the offseason where Ohio State has tweeted 4 pictures from workouts, and we get to decide who the 4 most important people are going to be. And it's Brandon Ennis, Jeremiah Smith, Devin Sanchez, and TJ Alford, someone we didn't talk about on this pod.
We see one photo of TJ Alford close up with his face doing a squat, and we're like, I think TJ Alford might be a hero. I think he might be the greatest linebacker. He might be Lawrence Taylor.
Hey, we saw a lot of.
And then we're like, well, they didn't post a picture
of last offseason.
Yeah, fair. They didn't post a picture of this guy. He must stink.
So here's the problem with that logic, and it's exactly what Stefan just said. That's the problem. That statement right there is the problem.
Everything matters.
Everything matters. They never do anything on accident. And because we know they never do anything on accident, anytime it's just simply, we just posted some pictures and we thought these were the 4 coolest ones.
Anytime they do something on accident, it's not allowed to be an accident.
Yeah. Because why is TJ Alford up there with the potential block, the best player in the sport, and a guy who we are talking about defensive passing defense hinges its entire concept on? Why are you there? See, this is how you get content for 9 months. Man, Roger Goodell's a genius. He created this world where everybody feels like
you could have this world in college football too, but too many people are interested in money more than anything else.
I mean, that's everything in life. Everybody's more interested in money.
Well, the NFL is too, but you just said Roger Goodell, but they have a plan. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they just have structure with their money. They just not just like handing it out.
Yeah, you can be after money, but also like have an idea of how to do it. And these people have no idea.
I think they have an idea. It's just every idea they present is killing the sport. Like every single play. Patini, why do we need 24 teams in the playoff?
Yeah. Real quick thing, now that we're talking about things we hate in the sport, I wish I had saved the tweet. Shout out to the Ohio State fan that saw that Indiana, Miami had 30 million viewers and said, hello, Indiana, can I introduce you to Big Noon Kickoff?
Oh, yeah.
It's like Fox has found a team that's willing to bring ratings. Welcome to Big Noon. Indiana, Ohio State, I guarantee you, will be a noon kickoff in Bloomington, Indiana.
Listen, I think that might be, they're going to pick Michigan first, the Ohio State-Michigan game. I guarantee you that's their next pick.
Yeah.
Guarantee it right now.
Indiana plays Ohio State at home.
Noon.
So that's a nooner. They play USC at home. Debatable, because I don't know if they'll have a Pacific team do that. They play at Michigan. Depending, I mean, like, look, unless that's like Ohio State, Oregon weekend or something like that, lock.
Well, who is Ohio State playing? Who's Ohio State playing? Because that's the thing. And listen,
that's what I'm saying. Unless it's Oregon.
Here's the fun thing. we don't have to play this game right now because we're going to know every week's game next week and we can do this next week. But it's like, listen, if Ohio State's playing someone with any level of a pulse, even if it's like the slowest pulse ever, they're picking Ohio State. And if not, they're picking Indiana. So, yeah, sorry, Bloomington. Get ready to learn being up at 7:30 in the morning for a tailgate.
Their schedule's actually not that good. So maybe they won't play as many noon games as we thought.
I mean, Ohio State's schedule in 24 sucked. And how many weeks in a row?
I know, but you were saying, when does Ohio State play? So that's what I'm saying. Like, Ohio State has a tough schedule. They might play a lot of nooners, and Indiana might not.
Ohio State's going to play a noon
big noon kickoff.
Yeah, it's good. Listen, it used to be Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and now it's just going to be Ohio State, Michigan, and Indiana because they can't do Oregon at big noon unless they're playing on the road. Get ready to learn it. This is your reward for winning a primetime national championship game is playing at noon all the time. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Interesting week of pods. Schedule comes out this week, and so obviously that'll be a big talking point. We haven't done a rapid fire pod in quite some time, and so it's probably time to do one of those pods as well, and some other ideas I'm cooking up and thinking about right now. Listen, as I told you earlier, I'm just trying to get an animal healthy right now. So it's been a rough couple of days for me over here. Keep your boy in your thoughts. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.